We have about 38% of our colleagues actually work in the branches. And we closed the lobbies at the very beginning of the pandemic for 60 days, but we kept the drive-thrus open. Then after 60 days, even the lobbies were open. And they had to work in the physical locations. Everyone else, just about everyone else, went remote literally within 1 week of the shelter at home. And so it's been challenging because it sort of created this, that's not fair. Why do I have to go into the physical location and everyone else gets to work from their home environment? So we've had to deal with that. And then as we are, we've prepared our workspaces so that they're safe, but it's very, we don't want to bring people back to the physical environment until they feel safe. And right now we have the Delta variant, so we're being very careful, but we want to keep our branches open. And so that has been mentally challenging for our colleagues.
A very significant percentage of our workforce is out in the field, out on projects. And we adopted a phrase, you can't build buildings from home through the course of the pandemic. And so many of those individuals are working in difficult conditions already, typically out in the elements. And then you add in this psychological piece where, hey, we're out here doing this, and there's a number of colleagues that are sitting at home in potentially more comfortable surroundings. And so we attempted at every possible time that we communicated as a company just to express gratitude for that and just to reinforce that as well, even though there was a perception that working from home might be preferred to then showing up in person, being aware that a lot of folks that were working from home weren't necessarily always working in idealistic conditions as well. Many had to overcome technology challenges, childcare challenges. So certainly through the initial stages of COVID, trying to figure out how to make your workplace function was really a challenge for everybody.
Well, and no more so than for you, because you have to have people at work, because this is when we needed you most. Sure. But you also had to keep your workforce safe. How did you navigate that?
So for us, people think in healthcare, well, maybe 100% of your team is completely on the front line. The short answer is, frankly, probably 75% of our workforce are either on the front line or directly supporting the front line. So those individuals didn't have an option to not work directly in our places of work. But about 25% of our team worked in corporate offices, work in IT shops, work in other settings, finance shops, et cetera. And so, and I would say that probably healthcare pre-pandemic probably was not as far along as other industries in terms of thinking about virtual work. And so it was a bit of a challenge for us. There were a few areas that we were moving towards virtual before the pandemic. Call centers, some of our revenue collection functions, but most of the rest, they were focused on being in the office. And so we moved those folks pretty quickly in late March of last year, like most businesses did, to a virtual setting. And I would say that our team members experienced the same emotions that you see in other workplaces. In some cases, they felt guilty because they knew we have nurses, doctors, medical assistants, et cetera, that have no choice. In other cases, they felt disintegrated and sort of detached from what we do.
Give me your takeaways about how this has changed the culture and the environment of where you work.
We're really paying attention to the culture within our company and then how our customers are changing their behaviors, because that affects our culture. And, pre-pandemic, I would say that maybe our branch traffic declined 3% a year. Post-pandemic, 30% decline. So people are opening up their accounts online. But that's really difficult to deepen those relationships when you're not sitting across from each other. And so from a culture standpoint, we're all about looking out for people and taking care of people, whatever stage they are in their lives. And we're really proud of that. It's harder to do digitally. And so as Jay said earlier, we're putting a lot of money into digital investment, but what we've got to figure out is how do we keep that personal connection internally with each other if we're hybrid or remote, and externally with our customers. That's to me the challenge that we're facing.
The chapter on how COVID has impacted business is far from over, and I think there's quite a bit more that will be written. I'm a generally optimistic person. I am a firm believer in the power of human potential and the remarkable ability that we as people have to be adaptable. And I think we've seen that over the course of the last 18 months. I think it's encouraging that in many ways, in many businesses, metrics indicate to a higher level of engagement than there's ever really been in the past. And so I think that despite the tremendous negative impact that COVID has had on so many lives, I believe in mass, in total, as business, we will be in a better place. I think the work-life balance of people, our team members, will be improved as a result of a lot of the tools and the new ways of working that we've learned through this. And I think that business 5 years, 10 years, whenever we move into more of a steady state, we will be far better as a society as a result of what we've experienced.
There was a renewed focus on the inequities affecting communities of color during the pandemic and racial justice protests. As a result, businesses are working to better promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Matt Elliott from Bank of America, CARLA Walker-Miller of Walker-Miller Energy Services, and HUSSEIN Berry of Delta Airlines talked about racial equity in the workplace.
When the George Floyd incident happened, we had to take a deep look. It was an inflection point for us, as it is for many companies out there, right? You had mentioned that companies are doing and saying all the right things right now. I think the biggest thing for us was to be transparent, to kind of live it and understand what uncomfortable conversations were like. I mean, before the George Floyd came to light, before the whole pandemic thing came to light, we were already introducing things like uncomfortable conversations and being open and talk about things that have been taboo, like politics and sexual orientation and whatnot. But the level of looking at our component of diversity and looking within our diversity lineup and where the opportunities are have been eye-opening for all of us. And it's been eye-opening from the top all the way through the entire organization. So, to list out everything that we're doing, there's a lot going on. But I think the most important thing is that we're open and transparent and we're being bold about it. And not to insinuate anybody's being obsessive over watching Delta in the media, but Ed has put himself out there, right? On the pandemic front, on the racial injustice front, and the most recent thing that you can probably say, wow, in terms of his participation in this world is the voting rights in Georgia and the position we took from that standpoint. So I think it's important for us, and not that we're experts in politics by any stretch, but it's been really important for us to represent our customers, represent our employees, represent the community in all the right ways. And so the work just started. There's a long way to go by any stretch, but I couldn't be more proud of Delta and all the work we're doing, especially coming from a diverse background myself.
The first thing for us is that diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of our business strategy. We really feel like in order to be a great organization, we have to be a great place to work. And part of that means you can bring your whole self to work, And so we really started doing more listening. We have a concept called courageous conversations. And, we were able to have more and still do have more than we ever did before. And because when you get a chance to hear somebody's lived experience, and it's real for you too, then nobody's a label. Their experience is part of you as well. And that's been a key part of our strategy, is to drive that out and make sure that we're listening first and that people are heard. That's internal. And then external, we realize that there are these systemic barriers to economic mobility. So we came up with what was then a $1 billion, now $1.25 billion commitment to driving out and improving and breaking down some of these barriers to economic mobility in communities of color. So we think about health, we think about small business, we think about jobs, and these sorts of things really help us, we think, drive over a period of time some catalytic change. So the idea is that we make an investment here that attracts more money, and then the thing starts to build on itself. So to put it specifically in Detroit, an example would be our investment in First Independence Bank. So we make an equity investment and a large deposit in First Independence Bank. that helps Ken Kelly and his team further their mission. So we're making lots of investments like that all over the country. And of course, Tiffany Douglas and I are doing our best to bring that money here to Detroit. Hopefully we get more than our fair share. But those are two of the basic things that we're doing. But I think it's really critical for all of us as leaders and all of us as people to really be clear on our why. And diversity and inclusion is a big part of how we run the company. And it starts at the top. Our CEO chairs our Diversity and Inclusion Council. So it's something that we're held accountable for and we all believe in.
I am blessed to have gotten a couple of calls about being on publicly traded or private company boards. And one of the things I'll say about the women who are not getting those calls is everyone who wants diversity, if you want a woman, a black woman in particular on your board, you would have one. And the only thing missing is the will. The business case has been made over and over. The business case was actually made decades ago. So if you don't have one or two or three, because it should be a percentage of your board, then you really should be looking at each other as C-suite executives and as board members, because you are not getting the best or giving the best value to your shareholders because you're missing something. The last thing I'll say is, people act like finding a talented black woman is like finding a Siberian white tiger in Detroit. If you want, you can ask anybody. There are probably 50, 100 black women here. And for white guys, for generations, the entry point has been that you were someone's roommate or you played golf with someone. So why is it different for black women? You should be talented, you should be capable, you should have integrity, you should be a good person, you should be smart as hell. And that describes a lot of people. So use the same rules for black women that you use for everyone else.